Today we're ranking middleweight sport bikes from worst to best. Now, this is one of the most interesting and dynamic categories in motorcycling right now. Because for years, the Supersport world revolved around screaming inline-4 600cc machines. But the times, they are a-changing. Now we've got parallel twins, spicy V-twins, and charismatic triples living alongside the traditional holdovers. So it begs the question, what's the best middleweight sport bike on sale today? There's only one way to find out. Let's get started. Kicking things off at the bottom of the list, we have the Honda CBR 650R. This is a sport bike for someone who wants the sport bike aesthetic without the reality of owning a Supersport. And you know, I guess there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of what this whole list is about. This bike uses a 649cc inline-4 engine that makes 94 horsepower. This engine configuration and power output tells you a lot about this bike. The displacement is bigger than a traditional 600, but the horsepower is lower, so that means we know the engine's been detuned for street-oriented performance. Now, back in the day, this was a common strategy for Japanese manufacturers. They'd take a race-bred inline-4, they'd bloat it up a little bit and detune it. That was in the days before twins and triples took over. But today, this strategy feels a little antiquated. Now, the Achilles heel of this motorcycle is its weight. It tips the scales at 466 pounds wet and ready to ride, and that is some pretty serious bloat. The CBR 650R is also exclusively sold with Honda's e-clutch now, which not only allows you to shift up or down without the clutch lever, it also allows you to come to a complete stop without using the clutch lever either. It's some pretty interesting tech. We made a ton of videos about it here on the channel, but for me personally, it's not that interesting of a proposition as I'm more of an analog purist. This bike is best for riders who want to live with an inline-4 that looks like a sport bike at a glance. It's not really for riders who want that agile middleweight performance we've come to expect in this category. All right, next up, we have one of the biggest letdowns I've ever seen, and it's from Triumph. The Triumph Daytona 660 is a dagger through my heart. The original Daytona 675 was one of the greatest middleweight sport bikes ever built. It was a beautiful, razor-sharp machine with an awesome, high-revving 3-cylinder engine. It's the motorcycle that struck fear into the souls of all the Japanese 600s at the time. And it's been my preferred track motorcycle for years, and I've just accepted the fact that no matter how frequently or infrequently I do track days over the years, I will always have a Daytona 675 in my garage. I am the steward of that machine, it is my heirloom, and I love it. All that being said, the Daytona 660 is not that bike at all. And that really pains me, because it's using a 660cc inline triple, making about 95 ponies and 51 foot-pounds of torque. The engine's fine for what it is. It's basic architecture borrowed from the Trident 660 naked bike. Triples bring a nice balance of torque and high revving power, and this one isn't too shabby. In a world full of parallel twins, it's cool we have it. The problem is everything else, because while the 675 was born a race bike, the 660 is just a naked bike with fairings. The frame, geometry, and fundamental underpinnings are all naked bike parts. A ground-up sport bike chassis behaves really differently from a naked bike with fairings bolted on. The riding position is fairly relaxed, all things considered. The wheelbase is kinda long. It's a street bike first and a sport bike second, third, or maybe even a distant 10th. And that's what makes it so disappointing. This bike is best for riders who want a comfortable, interesting triple that has fairings. It's not for riders who want performance, pedigree, or the premium feel of a Daytona 675. And to me, it is not my Daytona. Up next, we have the Suzuki GSX-8R. Now, this is a motorcycle that I don't have particularly strong feelings about one way or another, and honestly, that might be its biggest problem. The GSX-8R uses Suzuki's current workhorse parallel twin that's found in a handful of models like the GSX-8S or the V-Strom 800. It is 776 cc's and makes 84 horsepower and 57 foot-pounds of torque. It's a good engine. It's torquey, linear, and has a usable power like most of the other Japanese twins these days. But like the Daytona 660, the 8R is fundamentally a naked bike with fairings. Its wheelbase is pretty long and the geometry is pretty conservative. It's a bike that feels planted and stable, but not as eager to change direction as a more performance-oriented Supersport. These bikes have been referred to here on the channel as not so super sports after all, so I suppose that comes with the territory. None of this makes the GSX-8R a bad motorcycle, you just have to know what you're getting into. More comfortable ergonomics, predictability, and standard tech you'd find on any Japanese middleweight. It's essentially like a sport touring light motorcycle. This bike is best for riders who want a comfortable, modern middleweight for daily use like commuting or longer rides. It's not really for riders who want a super aggressive or exciting sport bike. But it's pretty middle of the road, and I think it's pretty good at what it does. Now let's move on to another option that is much more sporty in the world of not-so-super sports. The Yamaha R7 is an interesting motorcycle because it was equally praised by younger squids as it was maligned by older ones. This bike was highly criticized for being less powerful than the discontinued R6, despite the fact that Yamaha made it very clear that the R7 was not meant to be an R6 replacement. That's what the R9 was for. Yet, it was also an early pioneer in the not-so-super sport Twins Cup category, of which there are now countless entrants, only to have been predated by the Aprilia RS 660, which really kicked off this category. And unlike some of the bikes we mentioned earlier in today's video, the R7 is one of the sportier of the bunch. Not necessarily because of the engine per se, which is the CP2 engine from the MT-07, lifted directly from that motorcycle, making 75 ponies and about 50 foot-pounds of torque, but it's because of the other components that complete the package. And don't get me wrong, it's a great bulletproof engine, but it's not the most powerful compared to those that came after it. Yet, this bike ranks higher than some because it feels way more like a real sport bike than the 8R or the 660. The rider triangle, the suspension, its new IMU-based tech package, they're all better tailored for sporty riding on the twisties or even a track day. It's best for the rider who wants a sporty, no-nonsense, lightweight sport bike with a proven engine and advanced tech. And hey, it's got R-bike styling, so it looks pretty cool. It's not for riders who are chasing big horsepower figures or want a more comfortable ride for commuting or city riding. You know we're partial to spicy Italian V4s on this channel, and if you're riding a machine as iconic as a Ducati, you're gonna wanna check this out. Quadlock is one of our new channel sponsors for 2026, and they've partnered with Ducati for an official license collaboration, and it looks killer. They've launched the Ducati Corsa Edition for that pure racing DNA, and the 100 Years Edition celebrating a century of Italian heritage. These mag cases use the signature quad lock twist lock mechanism, and you can use their vibration dampener to save your phone's camera from those ultra high rev vibrations. Whether you go for a fork stem or a handlebar mount, this is race-bred performance for the road. Grab the official Ducati and Quadlock collaboration at quadlockcase.net or use the link in my description down below. Your cockpit deserves this upgrade. Thanks to Quadlock for the support on today's show. We're excited to work with an industry-leading partner like them. Now let's get back to the show. The Kawasaki ZX-6R is the last proper survivor of the traditional four-cylinder supersports era. And compared to the Gixxer 600 or the CBR 600RR, at least in how it's sold in the US, the ZX-6R is the only one worth purchasing. For years, the middleweight sport bike segment revolved around screaming inline fours that made all their power near the red line and demanded to be ridden super aggressively. Most manufacturers abandoned this formula in the wake of emissions regulations, changing customer preferences, or some conspiratorial cabal if you are to believe the most active users of r6lovers.com. Don't go to that website. But Kawasaki stuck with it, and now the ZX-6R is the only truly updated 600 class supersport on the market. And there's a few reasons for that. This bike uses a 636cc inline 4, making 127 horsepower and 52 foot-pounds of torque. The extra 36 cubes of displacement over traditional 600 give the engine a little bit more oomph in the mid-range without sacrificing that high-revving personality that makes 600s so addictive. Because come on, I'm not going to sit here and tell you they don't sound awesome when they're pinging off the limiter. It's a ton of fun. Now, unlike these not-so-super sports, the ZX-6R is a true blue or green sport bike. The chassis is compact, the geometry is aggressive. It's a very track-capable machine right out of the box. Kawasaki continued updating this bike over the years, so it's got modern electronics like traction control and a quick shifter up and down to pair with its adjustable suspension and monoblock calipers. Now, there have been some highly controversial engine issues in recent years, so that's something to consider if you're in market. You might want to do your own research before signing on the dotted line, and I would recommend not buying a brand new one until it's sorted out. But until then, the ZX-6R remains a true supersport that has continued to evolve instead of collecting dust, unchanged or being outright discontinued. It It's best for riders who want a classic high-revving four-cylinder with race bike components and modern tech. It's not for riders who want a street bike with some comfort and lots of low-down grunt. This bike only wants one thing, and it's disgusting. Now it's time we move on to the bikes that represent the new generation of super sports. The first motorcycle we have that hails from this new generation of super sport motorcycles is the Yamaha R9. Now this is a bike that a lot of people were very anxious for and waiting and speculating on for years. Yamaha's CP3 inline triple is one of the engines that has defined the last decade, so it was only a matter of time before it was found into a proper sport bike chassis. This 890cc engine makes 117 horsepower and 69 nice foot-pounds of torque. Just like the MT-09, the engine is really the star of the show. It's torquey, fun, and full of personality, and it's far less compromised than a traditional inline 4 600, making power basically everywhere in the rev range as opposed to just the tippy top end of the range. And unlike the parallel twins, you got significantly more power and a much cooler exhaust sound. This bike does a very good job of splitting the difference between a tried and true race bike and a fun and usable street bike. But the R9 is not perfect. There's that annoying dead spot in the rev range that needs to be flashed out from the ECU. And if you were to use it as a track bike, you can't fit tire warmers with the stock swing arm if you have proper slicks fitted on the machine. It's nearly there, but not totally perfect. Because this bike is best for riders who want a fantastic engine and a chassis that splits the difference between a race bike and a street bike in a pretty effective way. It's not for riders who can't move past the R6 discontinuation or want a bike that's a little more exotic with character you can only find in a European motorcycle. And if you want, we made tons of videos about the R9 when we had it last year as a giveaway bike. Go and check that out in the catalog. The Aprilia RS 660 is the motorcycle that arguably started this whole new era of middleweight sport bikes. Because when this bike first came out, it was a really big deal. At a time when most manufacturers were neglecting their long-established 600s or just discontinuing them entirely, Aprilia took an entirely different approach to this segment. This bike uses a 659cc parallel twin, making about 100 horsepower and 49 foot-pounds of torque. And compared to the Japanese parallel twins that have come after it, most still can't hold a candle in the way of power or character. It's a motorcycle with a real proper aluminum frame, sporty geometry, and rider ergonomics that slot perfectly between sport touring and pure sport. It's one of my favorite new bikes on the market today because it just is so perfect. The RS 660 also set an unrealistic standard for electronics in a middleweight bike. It's loaded with the same APRC goodies you'd find on Aprilia's flagship machines. The sound of the engine, the design, the interesting paint colors all bring a character that Japanese bikes just couldn't quite capture at the time. This bike sits so high on the list today because it's a near perfect execution of the new generation middleweight sport bike. Fun and usable power, a great sound, good looks, serious performance chops that don't totally overshadow practicality. And the price isn't that bad either. This bike is best for riders who want a light, premium middleweight sport bike with advanced tech and a great chassis. It's not for riders who want the most horsepower or the most totally bulletproof ownership experience that comes from Japanese bikes, but I think it may be the best choice on the list. But let's move on to the #1 spot and my favorite middleweight sport bike, and the one that I just can't stop simping over. The best middleweight sport bike in our ranking today is none other than the Ducati Panigale V2. Now, while the older Panigale V2 felt more like a scaled-down version of their flagship superbike, the current V2 adheres to the philosophy of the next-generation Supersport incredibly well. It uses an 890cc V-twin engine making 120 horsepower and 69 foot-pounds of torque. Ducati has a way of being able to execute on higher levels than most other manufacturers. With just 2 cylinders, they're able to make nearly as much peak horsepower as a 600cc inline 4 with like 50% more torque accessible nearly everywhere in the rev range. The engine is great no matter how you're riding it, and it's very lightweight too. Whether it be cruising around town or ringing it out in the track or the local canyon roads, the chassis is wonderful as well, fully adjustable suspension, Brembo brakes, and a comprehensive tech package. The Panigale V2 is the complete package in performance, character, and even design, which I know is a controversial take since some people can't seem to stomach the new look of this bike, but I find it to be quite handsome, and in person, it looks great. It needs nothing right out of the box, which is really rare for any modern motorcycle. This bike is best for riders who want the ultimate middleweight sport bike experience with premium components, great performance, and even a little bit of European flair. It's not for riders who are trying to maximize value or who want old school super sport experiences. But if I could pick only one of these bikes, it would be the V2 all day long. And yes, you do have to pay to play. It's a little pricey. But that's our ranking for today, boys. Thanks for sticking with me until the end. Of course, I couldn't mention every single motorcycle in the category. The KTM 990 RCR, for instance, is another new competitor in the new gen Supersport era, but because it's so new, I have yet to personally ride one. I didn't feel comfortable ranking it in the video today. Plus, it took down Zach Quartz, so for that, I'm having to leave it in the penalty box for now. Also, if you live in Europe, I know you have an updated CBR 600RR. We don't get that one. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. I can't include it in the video. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.